a frictionless experience is what most companies are going for, right?
Absolutely.
It's easy.
Yes.
It's quick, in and out.
Yes.
By definition, most of that is not service oriented. When service comes in, typically it's because it wasn't a frictionless experience. There was lots of friction.
Right.
And
I had a problem, so I need help now. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to PeopleMetrics Live. Today, we're talking about CX, which is also known as customer experience. And the name of today's session is What's the Difference Between Customer Experience, aka CX, and customer service? So before we dive in, I want to do some quick introductions. My name is Madeline, and I'm the marketing manager here at PeopleMetrics. And I'm joined today by Sean and Audrey. So why don't you both introduce yourselves?
yeah, I'm Sean McDade, CEO and founder of PeopleMetrics. It's great to be here today.
And I'm Audrey Skwersky. I am the Director of Customer Experience at PeopleMetrics, and I work directly with clients.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. So before we begin, I want to just give a little bit of background on PeopleMetrics Live. So here at PeopleMetrics, we've been measuring customer and employee experience for a pretty long time, and we've gotten a lot of questions over the years about both of those things. So we recently launched PeopleMetrics Live as a way to answer your questions about both of those things on a weekly basis. So we're very happy to have you here. We have 3 more sessions coming up, one this week on Thursday, and then 2 more next week where we'll be talking about CX and EX. You can go to our website at www.peoplemetrics.com/events to sign up for those future sessions. And you can also find recordings of the previous sessions that we've done over the past couple weeks as well. So all right, let's kick it off. The title again of today's session is What's the Difference Between Customer Experience and Customer Service? I know a lot of people get this confused, so
yes,
let's answer it once and for all.
And this was a chapter in my book, Listen or Die, which also talked about some of the questions that we've gotten over the years, but it's great to dive into this a little deeper because, right, Audrey, we work with so many different clients around improving the customer experience. And, you know, we know customer service is a part of it, but a lot of times it seems like people just equate the two. And I think they miss a lot when they do that.
Yeah, I was really excited about this topic. And I think we hear it a lot, especially with prospects who come to us who maybe are in an earlier part of their customer experience journey. And it's commonly heard that customer service is the same as customer experience. So I'm glad we're able to talk about it today because that's not the case.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I've seen all these conferences come up back in the day and they always had the words customer service in them. And then you've noticed they've evolved in a lot of ways to focus on they've used the term customer experience now. And I think there's a reason for that. And, you know, I'll take a shot at defining these 2 things. I did it in the book, but let me try it now. So really, the customer experience is all the interactions your customer has with you, right? It can be everything from the first time they hear about you to checking out your website to, you know, talking to some of your people to definitely service issues. Like if they have a problem, that's definitely part of it. But it's also experiencing your product or service. It's experiencing your website. It's every single interaction you have with the customer. That's the customer experience. Customer service is a part of the customer experience. It doesn't equal it. The customer service is how, like when your customer interacts with you and you're solving a problem for them, or you're answering a question or fulfilling some sort of need they have that's specific to the experience. So we'll go through a bunch of examples on this, but I just wanted to set the context. And I think, you know, we always come up, Madeline, you know, you challenge me to come up with some sort of controversial opinion, right? Or something to get people's, you know, mind working. And you know, I think it's basically that these are different, and I don't think a lot of VOC programs differentiate them. And I think VOC, voice of customer programs, would be a lot better off if they would really systematically differentiate between those touch points that are service oriented and those touch points that are more product or digitally oriented. And I think the voice of customer program would be a lot more effective.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't want to discount how important customer service is, and we should
Yeah.
continue to measure where we are. It's a huge part of the customer experience, but there's all these other touch points that we don't want people missing because they're so important to the overall customer experience as well.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking, like, we're always talking about B to C examples in here, Audrey, and I thought this would be a good time to just talk about like a let's go through a B2B example of how there are different touch points in the customer's or the client's journey if you're a B2B. And some of those are definitely service oriented, but some of them are not. And Madeline, you'll relate to these given you do a lot of marketing here. But I thought we would just take a PeopleMetrics prospect, right? Like, so if a PeopleMetrics prospect or customer, what would their experience be like with us, and how many of those are service oriented and not? So, right, Madeline, most of the time when our customers or clients find us, it's either through some sort of thing like PeopleMetrics Live, right? They're listening to this,
Exactly.
or maybe they're reading a blog post or reading my book. And that's certainly not service, right? We're providing information to them. We're hoping to add value, answer their questions, in a way that's very tangible to them. But that's part of their experience with us. And if they're interested, they often reach out via some means and they talk to us about their problems, and we identify if we can help them or not. And if we can, we typically, right, Audrey might go through a demo of our product and then put together a proposal, right? Those are key interactions that our customers have with us that shape their experience, none of which would be, I think, defined as customer service in any way. And then once we start working with them, though, then there's a lot of customer service elements, right, Audrey, that you and your team would do.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, all that upfront experience is super important for anyone. Certainly when we think about our prospects, we want to make sure that it's a valuable experience that they're having with all those touch points before they even get to the actual service elements. But then, yes, my team, we come in once an agreement is made during the implementation phase, and we're providing project planning, and we're setting up dashboards, and we're doing program design, and that's all service oriented, where you're working one-on-one directly with an account manager. And so it's super important to measure those experiences, but we don't want to forget about all those touch points that happened up front that didn't have the service element to them.
Even within the engagement, right, we have certain clients, like we have a client where there's almost 1,000 users logging on basically every day to our software to understand what their customers are feeling and about their experiences. And, they're logging in every day and going through and understanding their customer sentiment through dashboards, text analytics, alerts, all these different things, none of which really have a service component to it. It's
Right.
more of a product component. And if they don't understand something, like, I don't understand what this dashboard means, they'll then contact your team, right, Audrey? And then the service element happens. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that these are really differentiating, and they should be all part of your voice of customer program, not just the service element of it.
Right. Yeah. I think what you said up front about customer service being an interaction with a person, but it's usually surrounding a problem or a question. So we don't want to wait to measure until somebody has a problem and then figure out what's going on. We want to make sure that their experience with our product or digital experiences are all valuable and are working for them before they even get to the service element. And then certainly we want to know how the service interaction went. Was it helpful? Were they able to resolve their problem and things like that?
Yeah, I think in the book I wrote about when you go through and you map your customer's journey, which everybody should do, and that's the first step. And I encourage you to map their journey even before they become a customer, like we were talking, because the experiences they had with you before they become a customer shape the experience they have with interacting with you, because their expectations are set in that phase, right? And especially in a B2B context, like the conversations we have leading up to an agreement, they set the tone for the entire experience that the client has. So, we do our very best to be 100% transparent on how long things are going to take, what the product's going to feel like, how easy we are going to be to work with. But until, those expectations are set, but when they experience it, then it goes to another level, because then they know whether we were telling them the truth or not, which we always do.
Right.
But it's in a lot of B2B sales situations that might not be the case, and that impacts their experience greatly once they experience the product or service.
That's true.
Yeah. But it's super important, I think, to map that entire journey and identify with each interaction, hey, is this a service-oriented interaction or is this not? And making sure that the ones that are not just don't get thrown away. And it's like, well, we're not going to measure those. And they really work together, right, Audrey? Like I think there was an example that you and I talked about earlier that might be good to share.
Yeah, you know what? I actually thought of another one. So I usually do banking online, and we have a number of retail bank customers that we work with. And so the online experience is super important. There's no service involved. Was I able to complete the goal of my website session? Things like that need to be measured. In this case, I tried to do something online and I couldn't, and I had to go into the retail location, which I haven't done and I don't know how long. And it really opened my eyes to how important the non-service aspects of even that are. From the parking lot, is the parking lot clear of debris? Are there parking spots that are clearly marked? To going into the building in this COVID time, are they being safe? Is there hand sanitizer? Is it clean? Are the chairs spaced out? All of those things were part of my experience before I even got to a face-to-face interaction with somebody to help me. And so it really helped drive home for me how important each touch is. And the check-in process, I had to check in on a screen. Did it go smoothly? Did it work? How long did I have to wait before somebody was available to assist me? Those are all important pieces of the overall customer experience that need to be measured in a voice of a customer program, or you're missing that. And then I finally got to the customer service interaction with the teller who was able to help me. And that was extremely important too. She helped me. It was fast, it was easy, and it was done. So overall, I had a good experience, but it was because each piece of that puzzle fit together in a positive way.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I mean, we've been doing work with retail banks for so long, and there's always been non-service touch points, right? We've always asked about ATM, for instance. Yes. Like that's not a service-oriented touch point, but that's a really important one. The online banking now is super important, just being able to execute that flawlessly without issues, whether it's depositing a check or whether it's checking balances or getting statements or whatever it is that you're doing online. It's really important. But you're right, like this COVID, variable, then there's even more to really measure. And I think, we probably should have a PeopleMetrics Live. I always get an idea when we're talking, but we should do a PeopleMetrics Live on how COVID has impacted the measurement of the customer experience and voice of customer programs. But for something like a bank, those are very non-service oriented touch points and reactions that somebody might have, but they're super important, or they're never even going to get to the service, right? If people don't feel like it's clean and it's safe, and there's, like you said, you can even park in some cases, then they're not even going to go into the retail location these days, or they're going to go in and never go back and tell everybody about it.
Right. Yeah. And I think things that people respond to now, how easy was it to complete my transaction? What was the effort that I had to put in? And if you're not asking those questions, then you're not going to find out that, the check-in screen didn't work when I got there, or things like that. If you're only asking me about specifically my service experience, you're missing out on a whole other part of what the customer actually went through.
It's a great point. So just building on that a little bit, Audrey, a frictionless experience is what most companies are going for, right?
Absolutely.
It's easy.
Yes.
It's quick, in and out.
Yes.
By definition, most of that is not service oriented. When service comes in, typically it's because it wasn't a frictionless experience. There was lots of friction.
Right.
And
I had a problem, so I need help now. Yeah.
So, I mean, we help and we think it's, let's not confuse. We think it's highly valuable to measure when there is friction in the experience.
Absolutely.
Because you want to identify the problem, you want to be able to alert our client, we want them to be able to identify what the root cause was of that friction, follow up with the customer, make sure that customer is happy with the resolution. They're not going to leave. They're not going to tell everybody about it, tell the world. But, understanding the non-service elements that make a frictionless experience frictionless is really, really valuable. Especially, never a time where it was more valuable than right now.
Definitely. And I think that part of when there is friction, making sure that you as the company know about it rather than having the customer go out and put it on social media or word of mouth. Unfortunately, things happen that cause friction, but you want to know about it. Even if your scores go down, it's an opportunity for you to make a change within your organization. And we track that via root cause tagging and customer reactions. Maybe it's a training opportunity. Maybe you need to make a change to a protocol, but without gathering that feedback, you wouldn't even know about it.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to dive into a little bit here, Audrey, is the customer service element. When there is friction, when there is a problem, we both know that's, like we said, really, really important to measure, and that's a key touch point. I want to reemphasize that. We're not saying that it's not important. It's super important.
Yes.
How does the employee experience impact the way the customer service, the level of customer service occurs within a company? Have you been able to see some connections there?
We have, yeah, and it's been really interesting. And I think what we've learned is that engaged employees are much more likely to provide stellar customer service. If you have employees who are unhappy, who are disengaged, who, are not having a good experience as an employee, then it's very difficult for them to turn around and to provide a great experience to their customers. And so when we're able to measure both employee experience and customer experience, we see our clients excel.
One of the ways that we've seen employees become more engaged in a service setting is being recognized for good work, right? Like that's something that's it's no doubt by their manager, but even more so by the customers they're serving. And we've done a lot of that work around what we call a recognition alert in a service context.
Yes.
So customers really appreciate when service-oriented people go above and beyond. And I think we asked this in almost every one of our programs. Who was it? Did someone do that? Who was it, and what did they do?
What did they do? Yeah.
Just, you run so many of these. To tell us a little bit about how people feel when they get some positive feedback rather than just being beaten down all the time from customers based on problems that they have.
Yeah, you have to remember these people in these customer service positions are often dealing with problems for most of their day. So when somebody is able to provide feedback and say, you know what, you've really helped me today, you went above and beyond and made a difference in my interaction, I think it's really meaningful for the people to have that call out. And then we've worked on a lot of programs where we're able to disseminate that information within the organization. Mm-hmm. So the employee will be called out. Maybe the survey response goes up on a board, or it gets distributed to a management team. And it's motivating for other employees as well, because they'll see that when they're providing these great experiences, customers respond and it helps them become more engaged.
Without a doubt. And that was sort of the last topic we were going to touch on, is how do we make this real within the organization? I think you just touched on a little bit of that, but like, how else do you think we, for the folks who are live with us, or even people watching on YouTube later, how do we make this real within the organization? And how do we make sure that the people within an organization appreciate this difference between the customer experience and customer service?
I think the first thing is really communicating that it is in fact different, that these terms are not interchangeable, that they mean different things, and that they're both important. That customer service is a huge contributing factor to the customer experience, but you don't want to lose the rest of it, all those other touch points. And then, like you said in the beginning, that you really do need to map out your touch points. You need to know, what is your customer doing? What does your website look like? What are their experience with your content? What does the waiting room look like? What does the outside of the resort look like? All of those different things, depending on what business you're in, what industry, are all really important. So definitely acknowledging that there's a difference, and then making sure you're very clear on what touch points your customer has going through.
Yeah, and I think, just to build on that, and making sure you're measuring them all, or at least the ones that are most important. So we'll do a live session on mapping touch points one day, but the basics are, you want to have them all, but you might not be able to measure them all.
Yeah.
But just make sure you're not, whatever you're measuring, it can't be all service. You have to measure the other parts to the experience, at least the most important ones. And the reality is they get left out of a lot of programs that we see, and they have to be in there.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the trend in recent years is that more and more things are becoming digital. And then specifically this year during COVID, when people are trying to avoid face-to-face interaction, a lot of interactions between customers and companies are digital. And so if you're missing that part of it, you're losing out on valuable feedback. You could have an entire interaction via text or chat at this point, and two people never actually hear each other's voices or talk face to face, but that's your whole experience. That's your interaction. So that needs to be measured too.
Definitely. Yeah. No matter which service, and I would consider that service too. Even the chat part.
Sure.
But even before they get to the chat, there's a reason why they're chatting. Something on the website didn't make sense.
Yes.
The pricing scheme, the pricing that you're offering they're confused by it. There's something about that experience that probably wasn't service oriented. It was the core product that was an issue, that then they're reaching out via a service element. So super important to measure all of it. And you can do so within the same survey, right? Audrey, we're not saying that this requires a completely different survey, right? It's just acknowledging that asking questions about these pieces.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of our clients can identify what interactions the customer had before they come to us. And so we're able to ask targeted questions. We don't have to ask everyone about everything. We're able to say, we know you had this experience. You went through this touch point. How was it? Was it easy?
Right. For our banking clients, I know we've gone back there a couple times. We've asked multiple touch points within most of our surveys.
Yes.
Some service oriented, some not, and people can still get through it pretty quickly.
Yeah, we still keep it short. We're able to do that, and we ask about ATM, like you said. We ask about online banking experience. We ask about what happened when you were in the physical bank. What happened when you got a new loan? There's a bunch of different touch points, and they're all very important because these are all the places that customers are touching your organization.
Yeah, that's great. Madeline, are there any questions we have from the audience that we can
I think I've got a couple here, and I think you guys touched on this a little bit already, but a question here about what is the best way to measure customer service touch points and non-customer service touch points? And is there a difference?
Yes. Oh, you want to take a first?
Yeah, so I think you're right, Madeline. We kind of were on that track, but in our surveys, we'll include questions for both. So you don't have to have a whole separate measurement situation going on. We can ask about everything in a single survey. And, we talked about, was it easy? Is there anybody you want to recognize? What about your overall experience? And then there are things that are not service-based that we can ask about too, including the ATM or the online banking. Those are important as well. So, any interaction, we can find a way to include it into the Voice of the Customer program. So have all your measurement in one place.
Right. And I think an easy rule of thumb is, think about, if you have a product, what are some of the product experiences your customers have? And think about those and include those. I think everyone now has digital experiences where they're getting information, or they're trying to understand your product more. That's another key touch point that I would include. And even if you're not getting direct feedback from the website immediately after somebody exits, you can ask it in other forms that other interactions. But if you are doing the website, then that's certainly something that you should include in the website piece as well. Not just focusing on, hey, did you interact with us via chat or anything on the session? There's other questions that I think are super important there.
Definitely.
What else do we have?
So this other question I've got is more on the team side, right? Like, who's managing this internally? Yeah. So The question is, should it be the same team that's concerned with both customer service and customer experience, or are those two separate things?
Roger, you work with a bunch of companies. Why don't you take a first shot at that one?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think it really does depend on the organization. But the important thing is that if it is separate teams, they should both have access to the data. It doesn't make sense to make decisions without seeing the other piece. And then the service level data might end up being shared up more than maybe the touch point data, but they're both important. And like I said, decisions need to be made when looking at both pieces together.
Right. Like if you had someone in charge of digital or product, sure, you'd want them to have their non-service oriented touch points and get them that data.
Right.
But the service oriented ones, I would think you'd want them there too. And like you said, rolling them up to understand your overall service capability is an important thing to do. So it really depends on the organization, but it's whatever makes most sense for your company. I think we always, right, Audrey, err on the side of sharing more with more people. Like I think if you even have that question, I would share it all and maybe configure what they're seeing differently on, like, say, their first dashboard. So the product people get more of the product-oriented touch points on their first dashboard, but they have another dashboard that looks at service.
Yeah, I think because when we talk about customer experience, we're really talking about a holistic thing. And to separate it out or to silo it doesn't make sense because you'll end up making decisions without taking into account other feedback that you have. So the most important thing is to make sure that people have access, and then you can make informed decisions moving forward.
Yeah, an interesting exercise to do if people are skeptical of any of this, I'm sure people are asking Net Promoter Score, right, on most of their surveys. A lot of people are, and they may be asking an open-ended question right after it. Why? Go through your whys and start reading it, and I will almost guarantee, there'll be a lot of service-oriented comments, both leading to a detractor or a promoter. But my guarantee you there'll be non-service oriented reasons why people are detractors or promoters. The product didn't work, the pricing's too high, too hard to find, wasn't clean enough. Like, you're going to have those type things that come up, and they are an integral part of the experience.
Yeah, we had a customer spend a lot of money on a phone system to try and automate things. They thought it would be really helpful. And we started reading the whys to the explained that NPS answer, and we saw that people were getting stuck in that phone system, and by the time they got to a service person, then they had a problem. And I think our customers' goal was to save money and to automate. They thought it was going to help them, and in the long run, it didn't. And they were able to tell that from their customer answers and realize that people don't want to be stuck in a phone tree if it's not easy, if it's complicated, if you have to go back, you're stuck waiting to get to a person. When really you called, you want to be able to complete a goal. You either have to be able to quickly complete or quickly get to someone who can help you.
Isn't that one of the biggest dilemmas our clients have? It's how much automation should we use to deliver customer service? And I think we've all been through these very frustrating IVR, interactive voice response, phone type systems that we can't get a person, or we keep going into these loops, and it can be extremely frustrating, and question whether it's worth it. I mean, that's probably another topic for another day, but it's relevant to the service-oriented question here. You can certainly get some pretty low scores on customer service-oriented touch points if you make people struggle too much, and that's the friction thing we were talking about. That's a lot of friction to get your question answered. They're getting a little better, I think, but it is slow.
Right.
That technology piece of customer service. What do you think now? And you must go through those things, right?
Oh, I do. I actually, my husband ordered some shoes, and something happened with his credit card, so he had to call customer service, and he was expecting it to be just a nightmare. And when he actually called in, someone picked up right away. So they had picked up on the fact that phone tree thing doesn't jive with a lot of people. They picked up right away, and he was so impressed. They solved his problem in 5 minutes or less, and he was off the phone. He just was overjoyed. I mean, I know about it because he was so excited about it that he had to tell me about it. So I think that's a great testament to, having a quick and painless experience when you are having a service problem. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the cost of these? We have these call resolution metrics that we often do with our clients: first call, second call, third call. We know it gets way more expensive after first call resolution, but I think something that people haven't even measured is, what about it before the first call resolution, when people are so frustrated they can't get to the first call, and then they go in and they take it out on social media, or they tell their friends, or they vow never to go back. That's something that's hard to even measure. And I think there has to be a lot of balance between the technology being offered and the friction of that experience from a service perspective. It's a super interesting topic.
Yeah, and Madeline, that story is interesting. Think about turning it around, that it became such a positive experience that he shared it with you and might share with other people. Whereas, it could have been just completely transactional. It happened, it was done, and he never thought about it again. But this turned into a good experience, and that's something to think about too.
Right. Now that's his go-to shoe place. So
that's a great story.
Customer, yeah.
But I think big picture, what we're hoping people will think about after this PeopleMetrics Live is, hey, what's my voice of customer program look like? How many of my questions are pure service oriented? Do I have enough non-service product and digital type experience questions in it? Am I truly representing the customer's journey? And and am I getting a full picture of the customer experience, or is my program really a voice of the customer service program? Right? Or is it truly a voice of the customer program around their overall experience? So if I would leave the audience with anything, is to ask yourself that question and take a hard look at what you're doing within your program. And if you're not doing a program and you're just starting out, I think this is a great starting point, because now you can take a fresh look without anything behind you and say, hey, what's my true journey? How can I include these questions to make sure I have a full view of the customer experience?
That's great. Yeah, I think this is awesome, and I know we're at a little over 2:30, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But Sean and Audrey, thank you so much for the conversation. I think there's a lot more clarity around the differences between customer experience and customer service, and how customer service is just a small part of the overall customer experience. And thank you all for joining us for PeopleMetrics Live today. If you have any colleagues or friends who couldn't make it to this session, there's no worries there. We've got recordings of PeopleMetrics Live on our YouTube channel all the time, so you can check out this recording in a couple days, and then the ones from the past couple weeks are also all up there, so you can check those out. We're also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, so you can follow us there. And I also encourage you to check out our customer experience blog, which is at www.peoplemetrics.com/blog for even more customer experience. And if you're ready to take a deep dive into CX measurement, you should definitely check out Sean's book that he mentioned earlier, Listen or Die, 40 Lessons That Turn Customer Feedback into Gold. That is available on Amazon for Kindle and paperback and all that fun stuff. So that's a great deep dive into measurement programs. And like I said earlier, we've got a few more sessions of PeopleMetrics Live coming up this week and next week. We'll be answering some EX questions on Thursday, and you can check out all the other topics that we're going to be discussing by going to peoplemetrics.com/events. And you can also check out recordings there too that are also on our YouTube channel. So as always, we love hearing from all of you. Please keep sending us your CX and EX questions. And I'm sure we've got a couple more topics out of this session again. So we've got a lot more coming up, and enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks for joining us.